Yeah, alrighty. G'day. Just gonna do a quick audio check, make sure everything's working. 2 secs. Gotta figure out how to do that. I'm a little rusty at the moment. You guys can carry on. I think we can just wait for a little bit because we're still waiting on a few people to jump in.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So
yeah, I have a toddler. So the toddler was sick, and then 2 days or 3 days later, all the family was sick at home. So yeah.
That's
All
exactly
it
the way
takes
it
is
worked.
one person.
Yeah.
That's exactly the way it worked for us as well. Our daughter got sick, and then it was within a week we're all sick.
Yeah. Exactly.
In a week we're all sick. I'd like to point out that I held out the longest though. Clearly the strongest genes in the house.
I was the first to go.
Were you, Dan?
Before my other kid. Yes.
yeah, I'm not looking forward to my odds. I'm probably gonna like last time I got there was some sort of infection which was gastro. I was the one that went up in hospital, so I don't want to be that guy that's in hospital.
No way.
It wasn't that bad for me, but yeah. I was skiing and I was really tired already, and then I realized I'm not feeling well. Next day, it's like, no, I can't get up.
Oh, here's Mitch. I'm just seeing we've got our friend from Scriptrunner, Haku's actually in stream. G'day, mate. How you going? G'day, Bob. How you going, mate? Alrighty. We'll probably wait around for about 5-10 minutes. I think that everyone's going to kind of slowly slide in. G'day, Mitch.
Howdy.
Alrighty. What I'm gonna is there a way you can focus a whole bunch of different people, prioritize
Spotlight?
different? Yeah, I know you can spotlight one person, but you can't.
Spotlight more than that one.
Can you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if I right click on something, it says spotlight for everyone.
Okay.
And you can do it at least twice, maybe more. I can't remember how many times, but yeah.
Okay, I've just spotlighted you, Jordan.
Thanks.
Oh, hi, Jordan. Over to you, Jordan.
You're going to be running this. Okay, I think. Okay, what I'll do is actually I'll just share my screen, stop spotlighting, and then I can kind of at least get some slides. That's Peter. Let him in. Yeah, so I've got some super exciting news, which is I have grass. That is so great.
Like turf, like lawn.
Yeah, proper turf.
Look confused as to what kind of grass he was.
Yeah. I'll just clarify.
Yeah.
It's not legal yet
okay.
here, is it?
Yeah.
That's another podcast.
Turf. It looks amazing. And now having all this rain, it makes a saving on my water bill. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, you've got to at the best time as well. You got to water a lot when you first put it in.
Yeah, I've got irrigation set up for it now. So I'm just kind of, it literally just runs in the morning, runs at night, and then automatically tops up. G'day, Glenn. How you going, mate? Hope all, Glenn just says, hope all the Queensland-based people are doing okay after the floods and then more rain. How did everyone go?
Work went under a bit. We lost our outdoor basketball court and oval under a significant amount of water.
Whoa.
But that was it. You know, a couple of ceiling tiles didn't survive, but no major damage. But yeah, the outdoor basketball court, that was under sizable amount of water. It went down fairly quickly, but
hey Wayne, are you able to share your screen, please? If I share my screen, I lose all the people, all the video.
Yeah, I can do that. I just need to rewire my computer.
Oh, I just dropped out. What just happened here? Oh goodness, my team's just completely disconnected. That was weird. Is everyone still there on stream? Yep, looks like it. Cool. We just lost, Teams just died. I don't know what's going on. And for some reason, that's a little dark. I'm just going to get some light out here. There we go. Mark off unintended disconnect. Yeah, it looks like it's just completely died. Ah. 2 secs. Let me just see if I can fix this. 2 seconds. I'm just going to quickly go AFK and I will be back. G'day, Shane. I'm just going to quickly go AFK, mate. I've just got to fix my teams. That is a terrible image. I'm just going to keep this Teams link open so that if this happens again, I'm prepared and I can just relaunch it. All right, I'm back. Okay, let me just go back to the screen so you guys are good. Personally, thanks, Shane. All right, let's see if this fixed it. Can I talk? Can you please let me in? I just have to send. Oh, I'm
Just
back.
before COVID, and then we had to drop all the plans.
I'm back.
So instead
Okay.
of Australia, I picked Austria. So yeah, just one letter and a few thousand miles.
And no deadly animals.
Yeah, true.
Okay. Yeah. So my team's just
sorry.
completely crashed. So
I think I can share my. Sorry, Michael. I think I
Yeah.
can share my screen now.
Okay.
Just let me.
No, I can't hear anyone.
Oh, g'day, Robert.
I'll point there.
Hey, Mitch. I just saw little Mitch walk by, mate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're multiplying. There's another one coming now. Here we go. You say hello?
No.
What questions will they be answering?
Yeah. What question?
At this rate, they'll be a lot more competent. than I
That's
am.
easy. It's get child and get child process.
Yeah. All right. I just want to make sure everyone on stream can still hear me. Everything's all right on that side. Yep. Cool. All right. All righty. Yeah, we've got a good amount of chat. All right. Well, let's kick things off. Let's quickly go through chat. Yep, we've got a few people in there. I still look for. Okay. Yeah, Glenn and Shane, you can mod this. I haven't actually taken you off mods on Switch, so yeah, feel free to mod, mate. I honestly don't think there's anything to mod, but anyway, man, I really need to fix that light. So I'm just like, sorry, I just trying to make sure. Yeah, you can mod each other. Alrighty, let's kick it off. So Wayne was going to MC tonight. He's unable to do so just because he's got to keep his voice. He's got COVID at the moment, and he teaches for a living, so he needs his voice to earn some money. So tonight I'll be MCing, as well as hopefully answering some questions. Wayne will be kind of doing a little bit of the news tonight, and I'll kind of drive most of it. Anyway, so. G'day everyone, my name's Michael. Welcome to the Brisbane Infrastructure DevOps User Group. Tonight we'll be talking about PowerShell Q&A. So we're going to be, I was actually going to say, I was going to hit right arrow and then I realised I wasn't actually sharing my screen. So yeah, thanks to our sponsors, which is ScriptRunner. Actually, Heiko's in stream, so g'day mate. Feel free to throw some questions at us, or if you obviously have any questions about ScriptRunner as well, Heiko's in stream as well. So feel free to shoot them through. We're also sponsored by Hudson. Hudson usually the ScriptRunner pays our Meetup costs, and they also ship us some pretty awesome merchandise. And Hudson is when, before COVID happened, they also offered a place for us to actually physically meet and have some great food. So next slide. I'm just trying to think. Are we going to talk about our next sponsor, our future sponsor, Wayne, or are we just going to kind of just... You're muted at the moment.
Yeah, sorry, leave that for now.
Okay, cool.
Not quite ready yet.
Yep. Okay. There's a future sponsor in the works, but we're not going to talk about it yet. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the news. little bit of PowerShell, good PowerShell news happening. I kind of just grabbed this off what the latest post was. So, security, I think is a really good theme for the latest posts, especially around what's been working with them. There's a lot of work for those guys trying to in the pipeline there to meet the compliance of the executive order that was written by Joe Biden regarding cybersecurity. So yeah, a lot of interesting stuff. So I'll quickly go through a couple of dot points, and then we can kind of just elaborate a little bit about that. So PowerShell Crescendo is now in general availability, which is it's out of preview. So yep. One of the interesting features that will be coming to PowerShell 7 is that SSH remoting will be getting its own PowerShell session configuration file. There'll be some features that won't be available, but essentially they really, tie down to Windows grouping and things like that within the remote. I always get it wrong. The remote capability. Correct me if I'm wrong. I always get it wrong. It's the PSSRC files within specific things to do with Windows authentication that won't be available. But essentially, you can be able to define commandlets and restrict commandlets usage and things like that. So, which is pretty cool. Another interesting piece of the news is an RFC is raised for custom PowerShell remote connections. PowerShell custom remote connections. So the idea here, and it's a kind of an interesting concept. I'm still on the fence about it. I kind of like it because it really makes that modularity, really makes it a little bit more modular, which essentially is that any remote connections are currently hard-coded in PowerShell, and the idea is to decouple them into their own, essentially their own entities. So you can write your own connections. So, at the moment you've got, WinRM, you've got SSH, you've got local pipes, you've got Hyper-V. I think Hyper-V uses local pipes. There's 6 of them. I can't remember all of them in name pipes. So yeah, that's the idea there. So some things around ASMI and WDAC updates. So they're just basically working with in PowerShell 7.2 to implement those those changes. They haven't really elaborated anything on there, but that's just a couple of things that I've been working on. And finally, PowerShell Get 3.0 is in preview. So a couple of key focuses, which is to simplify the code base, basically enhance fixed bugs, fix some usability issues, and fix breaking changes from version 2, and then essentially make sure that there's backwards compatibility with scripts expecting v2. So that's pretty much that. I'm just quickly going through anything else. I'll quickly send you guys the link. I'm just going to post it in the chat, in both chats. So feel free to have a read of it. It's a really, really good, interesting blog that was written. If anyone else has any other news, feel free to chime in. Alrighty. So yep, that's me. Wayne, you can take over.
That's probably all you'll hear from me tonight. Yep. So yeah, Azure Bastion, Microsoft continues to add features to the native client support, so you can use, native SSH client or native remote desktop clients to connect through Bastion now instead of using disgusting public IP addresses. And one of the new features they've added is file transfer support in preview. That was actually not too recently, but they continue to invest in this, and I think you'll see this trend continue. Databox, so that's Microsoft's method for getting data into Azure without transferring it over the internet. You actually put it on physical drives and then ship them to Microsoft, and they put it in Azure storage. You can now put it directly in archive storage. So we probably should have told Linus Tech Tips that. Might have saved him some money. And then VMs, on-demand capacity reservations. So on Azure, you have reserved instances where you can pay for compute upfront. And then you have on-demand capacity reservations where you can make sure you have compute when you need it. It's actually one of the funny things about public cloud is you always think there's going to be compute there. And then sometimes you go to spin up a VM in Azure and Microsoft is like, we don't have capacity. And you're like, wait, this is the public cloud. So you can actually, with on-demand capacity reservations, make sure that you have the compute to scale up or fail over if you need to. that's now generally available. Yeah, so that's it for me for the Azure news.
Alrighty. Does anyone else have anything else to add?
I had a question actually just about that on-demand capacity. I'll have to look it up. Is there a cost component to that, or is it a? I assume there would be.
Basically, you pay. Yeah, you say I'm going to give you Microsoft X number of dollars, and that'll make sure that they've got compute in the data center for you. Yeah. It's hilarious though, because like it sounds like you just might as well just buy a server. But anyway,
it's like insurance for your cloud.
I wonder what would happen there if like everyone went out and bought it, and then just all turned their machines on.
I'm surprised Microsoft or Azure didn't have that feature. I know at my previous job, we were talking about it with AWS to reserve some instances because, that was a concern where we needed to make sure that we had that capacity available if we needed to.
And you know what? I originally had the confusion. I thought reserved instances on Azure were the same thing, that it reserved compute for you, and it just doesn't. If you have reserved instances in your secondary zone and you need to fail over with site recovery because your primary site is down. Sorry, your primary region is down. There's no guarantee Microsoft will actually let you spin up your VMs that you've backed up with site recovery unless you have this, which shocked me when I first heard about it.
Yeah, it's like purely a billing thing.
100%. Yeah.
Instance, yeah.
Sorry, carry on. I'm just quickly pasting some links around. I think, so if you've got any further questions or anything, you can feel free to throw them in the chat. Anyway, on to next slide. So I think then, are we hung? Nope. Next slide.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
Yep. Alrighty. Okay, cool. So call for speakers. Yes, we would like to have speakers. If you want to have an interesting topic, anything to do with DevOps, PowerShell, Python, Ansible, whatever. I'm just looking at Jordan. I don't know why, but feel free to let us just jump in and chat. Jump into Slack and just let us know. Or just reach out to me privately, and I can get you on board, and we can try and organize a slot. So, if you're interested in presenting something, it does. And the thing is, it can just be a showcase of what you've done, a bit of a show and tell. We don't really care. Just like to see what people are doing and learning new things. So, feel free to feel free to reach out. So, next slide. Next up in April. Yeah, gosh, April's actually, it's coming up real quick. So next month, I think what we're going to probably do is I'm going to probably do a multi-part talk on PowerShell security. I know that it's something that I've been writing quite a lot about within the community textbooks. So I think there's obviously security as being something that a lot of people need to kind of, is a bit misunderstood around that. So I might do a bit of a talk on that. So essentially, I think we'll see how much I want to talk on it, but essentially we'll be focusing on script security, execution security, console security, and remoting security. So we'll see how we go. I did give a talk at work earlier this week on script security, and I ran for about 45 minutes and I ran out of time. So, we'll see. Alrighty. So anyway, let's actually get to the topic at hand, PowerShell Q&A. So first things first, I think we should introduce our speakers. Our panelists. We have, I think what we might do is I'll just kind of announce you, and you kind of just give a bit blurb about yourself, and then what we can do is I will just see a random person walk in the background with a towel. I will start asking questions, and then I will nominate. Initially, I'll nominate people for questions, and then you're free to answer that. Most of the, I'll be honest, the panelists, if you haven't seen the questions, they're pretty targeted, so don't worry. It's not going to be too, you're not going to be out of your depth. And then essentially, we've got some other questions there, but we'll basically open the floor up. Any questions that are thrown into the meeting chat, Wayne will send them to me through Slack so I can keep track of them. Twitch streamers, feel free to throw your questions in stream. Glenn or Shane, can you please queue them up for me, or just oh, never mind. I'll just have to watch them carefully and just scroll around. Don't worry. I'll just deal with it. Alrighty, let's get started. Alrighty. So I might as well introduce our first guest, Mr. Gale.
Hello.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I don't live in Australia. That's the first thing. So my name is Gail. I live in Switzerland at the moment. Used to be Malaysia, the UK, but I'm French originally, and that's been a long time. I even lived in France. But what I do, I'm the director of Synergy Limited. So that's my company. We are doing consulting, mostly around PowerShell, DSC, and a lot of coaching about. I don't like the word, but it's a bit like agile coaching. Just helping teams to apply some common sense or some practices that help managing work. That's the kind of things we're doing, and a lot of expertise around the DSC especially, which is rarer. So that's me. And I'm company based in the UK. We also co-organize. We're also the organizer for PowerShell Conference Europe this year, which is happening in June 2023, and that's me.
Alrighty.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Gail, for joining. Yeah, Gail's, you definitely, I won't say you've been a regular, but you've, when we jump in the stream together and we do random DSC things, it's really, really, really great. So I think, yeah, having you here is really good. And just for the people who don't know, Gail's also I would say the dad of DSC is probably the best way to describe it.
No, I'm one of the first follower. Let's call it first follower, when someone goes with something and then I just follow, and then I've been using it since it was released, and I've been working with the team, with the Microsoft teams on DSC on the next iteration, which is Azure Policy Guest Configuration. I'm still working with a team for that. I'm creating some content, and I'm also PowerShell MVP for a few years now.
Alrighty. Our next panelist, Mr. Jordan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, I'm a software engineer and I work on Ansible, which is a configuration management / a whole bunch of different acronyms and tools put into one thing. I live in Australia, in Brisbane. I mostly work on sort of PowerShell and Python related projects. There's nothing really too fancy or special about me. I just like working on various tools and projects and seeing what interesting things come up and working on different things. So if you have any questions around PowerShell or even Python or even Ansible, I'm happy to answer them, and we can go from there.
Yeah, Jordan's probably one of the smartest PowerShell people I know. So,
No.
Alrighty, and the next person we have on our panel is Mitch. Tell us a little bit about yourself, mate.
Hello, I'm Mitch. I also live in Brisbane, Australia, and there's not much to say. I've worked in IT about 20 years or something now, feels like, across many, many different industries. I worked with PowerShell for a very long time. I've worked with Wayne in previous roles, and these days I'm a team lead running all sorts of infrastructure and DevOps, as literally my role title, infrastructure and DevOps. Keen interest in unit testing, PowerShell, and all the other bits around how to make businesses work with those and show value of those tools. So yeah, that's me.
Okay, I'm quickly going to skip about myself because I've just seen my daughter run outside. Mitch, can you jump in the Slack, and can you
Sure.
Yeah, cool. 2 secs. I need to go and find my daughter.
Good luck.
All right. I've got the Slack open here. We'll just start off. So a bunch of people have already submitted many questions. So thank you to those who submitted them. Let's go. All right, we've got a few there. Jordan, I'll start with you since it's the first one I can see here. So the question is, can I use PowerShell to manage both my Windows and Linux servers? I heard it's not great for managing Linux.
Yeah, so that's a good question. And like when PowerShell went open source, I think in 2016, sometime around that period, it sort of opened up a lot of possibilities for PowerShell outside of Windows. I would say that your experience of using PowerShell on Linux compared to Windows probably isn't as polished as you would find it. It's definitely doable, and it has a lot of advantages by using PowerShell. But some of the things that you get from Windows, so like WMI and all the classes and commandlets that it offers to manage things like network adapters, DNS, and all that type of stuff, probably isn't present on the Linux side. So you would be delving more into using sort of the existing programs that you have on there. So like IP tables, IP, like all those different things that there's already an existing tool for it. So it's definitely possible to do, and I'm sure people do it quite regularly, and it's out there. So it's not something that's impossible, and it's not something I would say you can't do. It just probably requires a bit more work compared to what you might be used to with Windows. And as time goes on, more and more libraries and applications and modules will be written for things outside of Windows, making it a lot easier to use for it.
Alrighty, I'm back.
I recently used PowerShell on some Linux machines, which I don't know why I hadn't really used it much before. And the first thing that got me was get service. Oh, I wish there was get service, because there's obviously so many different ways to do services in Linux, and get service was like, oh, it doesn't exist. So.
If I may, so I work for the guest configuration team, and what I'm creating is 100% for Linux content at the moment. So we building modules, DSC resources, especially for Linux. So there's a big drive to say, okay, let's make sure that we can do. Obviously, what Jordan was mentioning, like there's no libraries really that exist already that simplifies and that has the the PowerShell structure to it. So we are a little bit building this just as examples, but at the same time, there's not as many libraries available as Jordan mentions. But there's things coming up, and some will be open sourced, I think, very soon. So watch this space.
Nice, that's great. I'll shoot you a question now, Gail. Anyway, so because we've got one here related to DSC. So is PowerShell DSC worth learning in 2022? Should I consider something else instead, like Chef, Puppet, or Ansible?
Is it worth learning? Yes. There's a lot. So when we talk about DSC, there's a lot of things that goes into that bucket. DSC is a big bucket, and there's always I always make the difference between the configuration management principles, which you can find in Chef, Puppet, DSC. There's also a slightly different one, like a bit more flexible with this less opinionated, I would say, with Ansible. Which is more flexible. You can use it more easily, I would say, but you can be very, very successful. And Jordan is there to tell more about this probably. But there's a lot of flexibility you can have with Ansible, and the principles would go across all of those tools, DSC or Ansible, Chef, Puppet, all of those. So those are great things to learn. Then in DSC, you have also other principles like idempotency, very important, which also translate to all of these other tools. DSC in itself, there's DSC v5, and then you have the PS DSC part, which is PowerShell, which is a module at the moment. So it's hard to understand for people who just came into it between the documentation as what you had before and what you are getting into with PowerShell DSC, these things. I would strongly recommend to look at the documentation, which has been updated very recently. And then is it worth it, especially if you use Azure? Yes, because guest configuration, which is one way using Azure policy to manage your VMs on Azure. This is definitely, this is new, this is really worked on. I work with the team doing this in Redmond, and there's a lot of things going on in there. So yes, it's still worth it in many, many ways.
One thing I find that DSC works well is it complements with existing tools. Like with the Ansible side, we've got a WinDSC module, which is currently Windows only, but you can use like the Ansible orchestration side to actually call out to the servers and kick off those DSC tasks that you have on there to do all that. So it's leveraging what the existing technologies and the existing code and resources out there, which is quite vast for Windows. I haven't played it on the Linux side, but it sounds like that there's a lot of work going into it to try and expand it, which is nice to hear.
Yes. So yes, like you're talking about the DSC resources, which is the libraries we're talking about. So there's already a lot of libraries, a lot of DSC resources existing for Windows. We're building some for Linux, and obviously we also want to show the community what is possible and how you do it. And someone mentioned Crescendo. Exactly, Crescendo is definitely something that you can use to wrap around those existing tools, and then from this you can create your resource also more easily.
Actually, that's something I never thought about, using Crescendo to actually use within a DSC resource. That's actually quite an interesting idea. I'll quickly, we'll quickly jump onto the next question. Mitch, I'm getting started managing Azure and Microsoft 365 using scripting. Should I use the CLI or PowerShell? Is one better than the other?
This is a good question. I think there's a lot of opinions about both. If you take Microsoft on their word, both tools are completely equivalent, both currently supported, both cross-platform. But it seems like Azure CLI is getting all the love and the lion's share of sort of the attention. I don't know if that's true, but it certainly seems that way. I've actually heard that from people within Microsoft. But in the end, I think it's really more about the platform you're comfortable with. So if you come from a PowerShell background, you're probably going to use PowerShell. If you're going to be writing scripts or automation and you do PowerShell, use the PowerShell one, because you're just going to get up and running much faster. If you're running one-off commands, queries, even if you're used to PowerShell, Azure CLI is really great for that, because it can do, I think it can do like it can auto fill out resource names and things, which is like, can make, just like jumping through, and browsing around your sort of resources really fast. If you come from a Linux background or you work with Bash scripting, go Azure CLI. It's a lot more like that. You don't have to learn the whole PowerShell thing. Then there's, which one's cleaner, easier to get set up. CLI is probably easier. It's just one install, bang, you're ready to go. PowerShell is obviously modules, but if you're used to PowerShell, then that's probably not a problem at all. Yeah. I literally hit enter and it was selecting my mute button. So, it really just comes down to which one. If you've got a background in one place or the other, go with that. Try both, really, or install both. Sometimes I use CLI because it's just fast to zip around something. And other times when I want to write a script, I use the PowerShell commandlets. So, but I do tend to go back to PowerShell just because that's what I'm used to. So
it's your bread and butter. Yeah.
But they're both good in different ways.
Alrighty. I'll take this question. So my company is concerned about PowerShell and it being used by viruses and other malicious stuff. What can I do to help convince them that PowerShell can be secure? It's a good question. I think the one thing I know about PowerShell is it's actually one of the most security configurable languages out there. And what I mean by that is that you have a very, very granular level of control over what you can do and what you can't do in PowerShell. PowerShell, like I've said before, I kind of call them the 4 pillars of PowerShell security. I don't know if that's the official term, but there's 4 types of things that need to be looked at in PowerShell. You have your script security, that's basically writing scripts correctly. That's using features like PowerShell, credential managers. So like, PowerShell secrets management, correct, obviously, the simple things, don't use plain text passwords. Secure string is somewhat secure. It doesn't necessarily, essentially just abstracts away the password from the console. It has been marked deprecated. There is something else in the pipeline, but no one really knows. But it's kind of still up in the air at the moment. The other thing with PowerShell is with script security is that you've got like code signing, things like that, where you can actually look at code signing. And I'm just trying to think. And then you obviously have other things like PS script analyzer rules and do things like that. So there's, within the script side of things, it's actually quite extensive, and there's a lot of things that you can kind of think about when doing it. When it comes to console and script security, well, they're two separate entities, and they kind of get lumped into being the same, but they are technically separate. Script execution really focuses on the execution of PowerShell code within your environment, however that is, using within Active Directory, within Azure Automation, it doesn't really matter. The idea there is just using app locker policies to be able to actually, or WDAC to be able to enforce only allowed scripts / signed scripts to run. Then you have, on top of that, you have console security. Console security kind of just comes with PowerShell script security. It kind of just tags along, which essentially is, really enforcing constrained language mode, which if you look at a lot of how a lot of the calls that are being made, especially within PowerShell malware, so they're trying to bypass the AMSI, things like that. Essentially, they're doing a lot of .NET calls. They need to use .NET to be able to actually, if they're trying to patch memory using C#'s marshalling classes, if they're trying to actually go into the web, they generally, most of them will go and actually use system.NET web client or web classes to go and do that. So by just having constrained language mode implemented on that natively out of the box, that functionality has already had its legs cut off. Now, you still do have some wiggle room within constrained language mode, but it's not as going to be as bad as what you're going to have when you're obviously having open slather within the organization. That's exactly right. Haiku's actually just posted a really, really good book on PowerShell security. It's a really, really good book. I've actually got the physical copy behind me. I think I sent him out a couple of copies last year, but it really goes into the nuts and bolts of that. So the other thing which I just wanted to talk about is PowerShell remoting security and really understanding session configuration. So, PowerShell JEA, what we call just enough administration. I generally just call it session configuration, and role capabilities, which essentially is looking at how to actually implement PowerShell security, PowerShell remoting security correctly using role capability files, and essentially using RBAC as a means to be able to manage that. Within security session configuration files, especially over WinRM, there's a fair bit of granularity that you can apply. You can set language modes, so you can essentially say, you can't run anything. There's different language modes that can be applied. There's, you can run certain commandlets, things like that, different permissions, the list goes on. And the thing is that because you can define this within role capability files, what it means is that different roles, so different people can actually access the same PowerShell session configuration and receive different configuration based on their role. So there's a lot of granularity around that, and I believe that, and like I said, in the upcoming talk, there'll be upcoming talks on this. But the thing around that is that PowerShell, when it comes to security, Microsoft have baked a lot of configuration within that. So it's just a lot of these attacks that are happening are basically happening because it's just been forgotten about. So it's one of those things that I think that if you kind of just got to have a bit of a read about it. You don't have to implement everything. There's a couple of things that I do recommend to implement there. So things like session, script console and remoting security are probably your most important. And then after that, it'd be your script. But yeah, and the other thing I was going to say is that if you implement PowerShell session configuration, that's not going to protect you against script and console execution. So you have to look at it as a whole picture and implement the whole suite, or essentially it's not going to, you're going to be still open to compromise. So yeah. Alrighty. All right, I'm going to quickly throw out the next question. I'm wanting to learn PowerShell. Where should I start? So I'm just going to open it up to the floor.
It depends how you learn, if I may. It really depends how you learn. So some people prefer to learn with a book, some people prefer to learn with videos, and some people prefer learning with doing. So there's lots of resources all around. So books, maybe you have books you can recommend. I like the PowerShell in a Month of Lunches. That's how I started a long time ago with, I think, the second edition. And then you have the fourth edition, I believe, that just was released a few days ago. And then you have videos, you have conferences, you have a lot of materials out there. Jordan?
100% agree.
You would.
Yeah, I agree. It just depends on how you learn, and sometimes it's a bit of both. I find it helps to read something and then reinforce it with a bit of doing the thing. Or I've always found that it's easier to get engaged, especially when people work and they've got full-time jobs and you're trying to learn a new skill that maybe will get you the next job. It helps to have some motivation to do that, and the motivation sometimes can just be solving a problem you have specifically. A lot of tools that end up out on the internet are just from someone who got annoyed with something and built something to fix their problem, and then they found it. So if you can find something or a challenge that maybe you want to do, like I'll do a weather station, or that toaster really annoys me, I wish I could do something with that, but then try and do it in PowerShell, and gives you a way and more focus on what you want to learn, and that helps build and reinforce those skills that you learn.
Yeah, I've got nothing to add. I think the only thing to add is check out PS Cones, written by Joel. It's really, it's a PowerShell module which was on GitHub.
Link in there.
Yeah, I was going to say if someone can throw the link in there. Thank you, Jordan. It's a really great. It's a really great tool for you to learn PowerShell. I tried to speed run it, and I realized it was a lot bigger than I thought. But I do think that'd be an interesting challenge, is to try and speed run it. But it's a great learning tool, and it really teaches you kind of the idea of kind of the concepts of unit testing, as well as on learning some PowerShell. Alrighty, next question. This is actually a bit of a good one. I'm trying to implement unit testing within my organization. However, no one wants to do it because of the extra time it takes to write tests. What do I do?
I had some thoughts on this because I've had this problem. But if no one else minds, I'll kick it off. So I do a lot of this sort of stuff, like trying to affect change in an org. So it's a bit tricky. It all depends on your organization, the type of work you're doing, what your position is, and whether you can affect change, or if you have people who can affect change. So I'll caveat it with that. But just like any company on earth, they're trying to, your time is an investment. So they're trying to figure out the only way you're going to get a business to adopt something is to demonstrate value. And so the value could be, like what sort of code are you releasing? What's the impact, financial or otherwise? If it breaks, are there multiple people or groups of people working on the same code? What's the rate of change? If it's one script and you're just doing a tool for yourself, or maybe one other person, it could be quite difficult to convince your boss that it's worth investing the time to put unit testing in that when you may only use it once. But a tool that, let's say, moves critical files around or checks something is right before it removes it from something else. Probably want unit testing on that to ensure and to give the business or your boss confidence that it's going to work when it's deployed. So it kind of depends on that. And the rest of it is people problems. So some people don't want to do unit testing because they don't know how to, and they don't want to invest the time, and you could get resistance that way. But my suggestion would be get to the people that can make the change, maybe in your own time, build something, and then demonstrate it to someone who actually can make change. So show them the advantage, even if it's in a tiny little thing. I've used it before to copy files. Wayne will attest that I seem to always be copying files for things all over the place and then deleting them. So you better be right. I better be damn sure I'm going to put unit testing in to make sure it's right every time I had to change that piece of code, that it was still going to do that thing and not just delete the thing without knowing that it was right. So find a small piece and try and demonstrate that to someone who can make those changes happen.
Does anyone else have anything else to add?
Yeah, I've put a link about the Plan, Do, Check, Act. So the idea is continuous improvement. The question when people say, well, I have too much work, so why would I write tests because it takes a lot of time? And basically, I don't know if someone can share it, or maybe I can just can I share it? Yes, I can share my screen. Give me 1 second. So there we go. Moving this away. So that's the idea. You have the Plan, Do, Check, Act, which is a continuous improvement. Let's put it simple: continuous improvement and quality improvement. The idea, when you see the little wedge that goes under the wheel, which is the standard, these are your tests. So you can go and you can make a lot of changes, but at some point, something may happen, and then you can go back down the hill because you didn't add your test to validate that what you were doing was right. So always make sure, you have this little wedge that make sure that what you're building and what you're adding to it is not going to be broken by some more changes later down the line. So always make sure you update your tests. You can go very fast without those wedges and you can go up, but at some point when you will need it the most, you will have some issues and you will have some regression, and this is where everything will be it might be a big problem. So this is where the value of the tests is, or testing is.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there as well. That's a really good example. I know that with my organization, there was I've had this challenge where to talk about it, and essentially I literally sat down and I thought, I can write a document on this that no one's going to read, or I'm going to write a whole bunch of examples and basically showcase how to actually use it. So essentially, wrote kind of a README document saying, and then just kind of showcasing all the different methodologies of testing, showing how to use mocking, how to, do testing within modules, and basically, and then just writing an implementation script which you can kind of take in different sources and just run your unit test. So you can just point it at a directory, within your build area and just let it go and find stuff and then make them run tests. So there's a whole bunch of things. But it's that exact thing. It's more about your future self rather than a future state rather than the current state. Glenn has actually just made a quick comment, which is, remember, testing answers 2 questions. 1, does my PowerShell do what I want? 2, how do I know my PowerShell does what I want? And
let me add that actually the 2 best talks I know about PowerShell and testing are done by Glenn. So Glenn's got 2 talks, V1 and V2, I would say, from the PowerShell Summit North America back in, I don't know, a few years ago now. But I would strongly recommend, I will find the links and put them here, or maybe Glenn will be able to post them here. But he's got a complete view on the testing pyramids, like a lot of concepts. Those are, in my opinion, some of the best talks about why you would do testing and what you need to think about when you do testing. Not that much on the, what is testing and what is PESTA, but really about the testing principles and ideas behind it. So definitely watch Glenn's talks.
I think the other thing which is really important, as well as, and this is just kind of moving on with PESTA, is do not use Pesta version 5. Don't use version 4. Just because version 4 and version 5, there's a number of breaking changes in the way the structure of the test work. So if you write your test in version 5, then you're not going to have, well, you're going to have fewer issues than you're going to have in version 4. So then moving
I
back
actually
up.
found the upgrade from 4 to 5 pretty seamless. Like on a lot of my projects, like I think there was 1 or 2 things that broke, but it was pretty decent. The 3 to 4 was a big jump for me when doing it. And yeah, like basically, if you're testing things from Windows, make sure you upgrade what version of Pesta it comes with, because it's stuck on an ancient version.
Yeah. And the thing is, and it's just a quick side caveat, you can't run update version on it or update module. You have to actually download a new version because it's embedded. So, all right, let's go on to the next question. Also, Twitch chat, feel free to throw questions in there. All right, next question. All right, where should I be storing my code? I'm currently using OneNote at the moment, and I'm open to alternate solutions.
I'm happy to start answering that one there. I would recommend GitHub. Just put it up on your profile type of thing. If you're not ready to try out Git and learn how sort of the repository work and that type of stuff happens, they've got a feature called gists, so GitHub gists. You don't have to worry about Git commands or anything like that. Basically, you just copy and paste the text into your browser and you save it. It comes with features automatically, like revisions. You can go back in time to see what the code was before you made that change, what changes you actually made, type of thing. And once you've sort of gotten ready or a bit more used to that sort of model, then I would definitely recommend graduating to an actual Git repository, whether that's through GitHub, GitLab, whatever Atlassian has, or whatever your company has internally. Just the benefits that you get from source control is just immense and crazy. You'd be doing a lot more effort and a lot more work trying to maintain scripts outside of source control.
I think to add on to that, one thing that, and this personally helped me, so, again, this varies from person to person, is when I started with Git and actually understanding how the repos and branching and all that worked, I kind of just went and watched a quick YouTube video on it, and then I used GitHub's desktop. So it kind of simplified a lot of the complexities with the Git, and it kind of makes it a little bit nicer and more palatable for people to kind of sink their teeth into. And it just really helped me kind of eventually get on board with it. And then, nowadays I'm semi in the command line. Like I can use the command line, but I generally just use GitLab on VS Code to kind of do my push and pulls. Though I have made a few mistakes, and it requires some really talented people to fix my mistakes. So
the command line can get pretty gnarly and like very in depth, but there's so many different tools and app programs and plugins out there that sort of paper over sort of that plumbing work to make it a lot easier for you. Like VS Code's got pretty decent integration out of the box, but then there's plugins to try and make it even easier for you, which is fantastic.
That's exactly it.
Yeah. That GitHub client is really great. I only more recently used it, and I was like, oh, where have you been my whole life? I've just been doing Git commands, but it does make it significantly easier, especially when you start doing complex things. The client just does a great job.
Yeah, I think, and that's exactly it. Like, it makes it a nice, easy interface. All right, I might just jump into the next question. Gal, do you have anything else to add, or I think that's...
No, I just think Git is a good thing to learn, but it's not just the tool for storing. It's really a tool that teaches you the collaboration around the changes. So it's really about making changes to some files and how do you collaborate around those changes. And sometimes you just collaborate with yourself. You have your past self, which is always in conflict with what you want to achieve. So Git is really there for helping out this process. So as long as you're using the tool, but you should try and slowly, whatever interface you're using, learn about the process with changing codes, and that's going to help you tremendously over time.
Okay, cool. All right. So the next question is, what is PowerShell secrets management? I'll quickly take this, and then I'll give it a quick overview. I'm not fully through and through PowerShell secrets management. I've probably just got a bit of a surface understanding of it. But essentially, PowerShell secrets management is the new way to store secure items within PowerShell. So whether that's strings, dates, blah, 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 list goes on. Secrets management is essentially an overarching kind of module, which kind of sits as a framework. And the idea is that it has vaults. I'm I know Mike K actually has a really good slide on this, but essentially it just has vaults, and the vaults themselves can be for specific password managers. So you can have a vault for Azure Key Vault, AWS Secrets, you can have it for LastPass, KeyPass, the list goes on. So the idea is that you register your vault within secrets management, and then basically away you go. With KeyPass, with Azure Key Vault, and this is one of the really good things, and Wayne was talking about, is within Azure Arc, you can obviously authenticate within Azure. You can authenticate a machine onto Azure with its machine identity. So, with that kind of thing, you can, using secrets management, you can connect to your Key Vault, authenticate with Azure with the Key Vault. Authenticate to Azure with your machine identity, and then basically connect to Key Vault and then go and retrieve your keys. So it's a nice. The idea there is to kind of separate the vault and the modules so that essentially remains modular. So there's no sort of it kind of keeps it a lot more open source and flexible. I think that's everything for me. Does anyone else have anything to add? Okay, cool. All right. Next question. I've got a bit of a silly question here. So this is actually I don't even know how to answer this. So I think this is going to be we'll see how we go. How can I make PowerShell take a photo of a person when logging into the computer?
Just taking a stab at it, I would have PowerShell, or you can even just create a scheduled task that runs on a logon. I'm pretty sure it can respond to events like that. How it would actually take the photo, I'm not 100% sure, but I would assume there is a way to activate the webcam and send some sort of command to actually take the photo, but I don't think there's like an official one API way to try and do that. That's going to be the tricky bit to try and figure out and understand.
Yeah,
maybe launching some sort of command, other sort of binary tool to do it. Maybe.
I was thinking you'd have to have a really big hunt around in C# to try and figure out how to do it, and then you could probably use the .NET classes. But I think that'd be a project.
And be careful with the legal implications, because in some countries that's probably not allowed. Yeah. So I just want to warn it there. If it's your company asking for it, just tell them that that might not be allowed in some countries, at least. In most countries, I would say.
Like I said before, guys, feel free to throw questions in. Glenn's just jumping off. See you later, Glenn. Feel free to throw questions in chat. Either way, and then feel free to ask it. I think I've got a couple more questions from the list here, and then we'll see how we go. Oh, look at that! A new object, DirectX capture argument list, video input, audio input. DirectX capture. Interesting. Alrighty. So the next question is, and this is more of a career question. I'm wanting to get into a PowerShell developer role. What do I need to do? I think.
Should I take that one?
Yeah, I think you can take it, and then I'll just expand on it because it's kind of that's what my title says.
So it's a great question because there's no one way to do it. I haven't seen a pattern to do it. The main pattern is, well, people who get into that role, what they do is to just keep writing PowerShell, and at some point, their job and their role transforms into being a PowerShell developer. That's how it happened for me. I come from operations, IT operations. I was doing that in different companies. PowerShell was just a very good tool for me to automate. I'm really lazy. If something I have to do something twice, not a big fan. And third time, I'm really pissed off, and then I start automating it. So that's what happens, and then you don't realize when it happens. For me, it was changing jobs, and I realized when I joined that my title was PowerShell developer. So it's not something that I really went for, although I loved writing PowerShell code. It just happened. And so if you want to push towards that direction, I would strongly recommend to write a lot of PowerShell, obviously. So try just solve problems, not writing for the sake of writing, solve problems with PowerShell, and make sure you share. When you share this GitHub, in meetups like this, to do quick demos. It doesn't have to be a 1 hour presentation. 5-minute presentations are great. If you really show a demo of a problem you solved, people will start to get to know you. It will help for your CV probably. Over time, it's just going to happen. In my opinion, it's probably just going to happen because you will have all the skills and you will have shown the skills. So what else is needed? Just at some point, maybe you will change the jobs you're looking for, and then you will land this type of job. Or even within a company, they will see the value you provide writing PowerShell, and it will be official or not, but that's what you're going to do, writing PowerShell.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how it happened with me. Myself and Wayne, we've known each other. Oh, it's actually 10 years ago. We've known each other for 10 years. So we were just automating anything and everything because we didn't want to have to do it. It was just lazy. But the thing is we had a really, really awesome platform that we could automate on. And, over time, his skills just improved and kept getting better. And then I think I managed to land then I landed a systems engineering role. And then basically from that, I was kind of writing a little bit of PowerShell. And then from that, it just basically, my next role was, essentially I kind of just started then, it was more of still a secondary kind of position where, I would go into and say, and they're like, hey, this guy knows PowerShell. And then you kind of just become the technical lead unofficially on that specific thing and the go-to guy. And then recently then it's actually a full-time role, which, it's my title says that, but I'm doing so many other things right now. So enterprise architecture. So I think, but at the end of the day though, like Gail said, essentially it's just just keep working on it. And like you said, share your projects. Like one of the projects I wrote, which drove me bonkers, was using the MVP contribution panel. So I used Adam Discroll's Selenium PowerShell module and just basically built a kind of a module over the top of that, which you can kind of just, essentially just apply a CSV file. You can write a domain-specific language, and basically it will go and fill it all out for you and make it look, I wouldn't say make it look nice, but at least it fills it out for you. So that's the main thing. And it's just really kind of, and the one thing about showcasing your work as well is that showcasing your work is more, I kind of feel like it's more important than being able to answer a technical question. So and the reason why I say that is that, you might not have direct experience in that because PowerShell is such a big area, so where, some person might not have an amazing experience with working with bitmap images in PowerShell, there could be someone else who does. So that technical question aimed in that specific area is going to be a bit difficult. But I think that the key thing is that if you have, public code that you wrote, that you didn't copy and paste, that you wrote, that demonstrates your skill, and then people can kind of look at it and go, hey, yes, he writes well-structured code, it's documented, it's, he understands unit tests, he's got unit tests in his build, that kind of thing. It really helps. And you can just point it, like that's what my resume says, and I was sitting in an interview and I was sitting there like, and I just said, I'm not going to answer those questions. Just go here, just go and look at my code. If you like my code, you like my code. If you don't, you don't. Like that's literally how I answered it. So,
I would add, a next question would be great to have is, okay, why should you care about sharing your code? And I think it goes beyond just being able to use it in an interview or something. I think it's great for yourself, just for improving. When you start sharing your code, at best, people, the worst case scenario, people don't like your code, and that's fine. They just move on. But sometimes they would just say, "Oh, maybe you should do this," or "Have you considered that?" And then you can have people contributing to your code, even if it's just telling you, have you looked at this one? Maybe someone's done something differently. Did you see that module? Maybe you didn't because it was very hard to find. But you start sharing, and it's really a habit to have, because then you will start collaborating on code. You will start to expand by browsing some other people's code, and people will look at yours, and you can ask for help or for reviews. And that's really, if I progressed my PowerShell, it's not because I was doing something in my own, it's because I started contributing and sharing with the community. And that's really what helps, is when you share, you learn. Whether because you try to say something and then you realize that, it's like when you teach. If you teach something, you realize that maybe you need to dive a little bit deeper to make sure you have a correct explanation. And it's the same with sharing. When you start sharing something, you realize that, okay, you need to really understand what you're saying, and you will dive a little bit deeper into the code you wrote, or maybe someone else will come and give you some feedback. Like, don't use write-host, which I'm not saying that is true anymore. But the point is, like, they will give you some arguments, whether they're correct or not. And this is a good way to learn, a best way to learn, because it's really fast.
I was going to say, that's actually very true, because one of the things we were working in with the PowerShell community textbook was I was writing a whole chapter about advanced conditions, and Jordan is my technical editor, and Jordan's basically said, hey, with when using bitwise OR operators, the predominant use for it is in enums. And so I kind of was like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. And so I literally had to go and learn all about enums, and then I come out of this going, that's great, I now understand enums. And so it's and I actually really like having Jordan as my technical editor. I always learn something new. So, but it's yeah, that's exactly right. Having some collaboration, and whether that's even mentoring as well. So, if you've got someone else who's willing to mentor you and kind of, show you some ropes, and also invest time, and that really makes a massive difference as well.
And everyone is willing to do it. You just have to throw yourself, whether it's a meetup, a conference, just on GitHub, projects, PowerShell community calls, like everyone's really willing to help. That's what the community is about. So just go out there and don't be scared. Everyone's been a beginner, and there's so many people like Jordan. There's a lot of people who are really here to help, and then they will give you some feedback and maybe guide you.
And everybody starts from the same spot. Like everybody starts new from the language, and they learn things, and our experience only has come through time and through all the other stuff that we've been talking about. So you can only improve from here on.
Alrighty. I think I've got two more questions, and then we will wrap it up. Remember, actually, does anyone have any questions they want to ask in chat, or just feel free to throw them out? Throw them out there.
There's one at the start.
I didn't see it. Well,
yeah, from Robert. Just posted it to the end of the chat.
Perfect, thank you. Has anyone had any experience with PowerShell scripts over web pages? So this is actually a really interesting question. Is Robert still in chat?
Looks like he had to leave earlier. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll see if we can answer this anyway, and I hope that he can see this. This is kind of this is kind of a question that can kind of go in three areas. So I'll try and answer. I'll try and answer all three. So web pages can obviously be REST API. So with working with any REST API, I like to call it the wild REST, because the implementation of you're at the mercy of the developer, and they don't necessarily adhere to best practices or any sort of schema definition. There's the best way to describe it is, with Homer Simpson when he's like, "That's one fine looking barbecue." Why doesn't mine look like that? That's kind of how I feel when I kind of interact with some web, like REST API web services. But at the end of the day, though, I found from that, it's always a learning experience every time I go to a different different REST API, and that's just because of the nature of the documentation, the nature of the implementation, and the nuances with the API. I know some are very straightforward, some of them are absolutely joys to use, and then some of just are very are not that great to use. So it's just a kind of a mix and mash. The next part is you can use if you're interacting with web pages. You can go about it two ways. You can either invoke web request and then start modifying essentially the request and responses within the browser. And essentially what you can do there is you can jump into developer tools. You can literally right click, and then you can actually copy the request and response, or the request as PowerShell. I know that's available in Edge. I'm not sure if it's in other browsers, but essentially you can do that. And you can kind of just replay that kind of that request that you have. It can get quite convoluted. It is possible to reverse engineer it, and I have reverse engineered quite a few of them. It's just that it makes it a lot of, it can be quite tedious to manage, cookies and things like that. So, yeah. And then the final way that you can interact with web pages is use Selenium. It's probably the least preferred way of doing it, because essentially you're simulating a user input. I would prefer to use requests and responses over a user input, but in some ways you're kind of just stuck with what you have, and then user inputs are probably the best. Are your best. Selenium is going to be your best way to be able to go about doing that, and that's quite PowerShell Selenium is actually really quite easy to use. You can essentially just install the driver, and then off you go. You basically connect to it. I've had a bit of play around with it. You can actually it's basically based off the it's all C# under the hood there, so you can essentially open up you can do all the things that you can do within the C# Selenium one as well. Though just be a little careful though, because it does have some memory leaks that I know of, and that kind of can cause things to go afray. All right, so I've got another two questions. Actually, does anyone else have anything to add to that?
That's pretty good. Okay,
cool. Question, any advice on moving from intermediate PowerShell to advanced and further into C# while lacking a CS background? I'm finding it pretty hard to break the wall through when C# nomenclature starts getting thrown around.
For this one here, like, I have an IT degree, but it's not strictly computer science. For me, just learning C# was the way of just actually finding something to do in C# and going from there. So at the start, you're always going to be banging your head trying to figure out what does this syntax or how to do this type of thing, and it's definitely a lot stricter than what you can do in PowerShell. But over time, as I learned more of the features and as I went along and asked questions in the various communities out there, I was able to understand it a lot more. And even now, I still have to ask questions about the various aspects. I find that you can probably get started with it quite easy. It's quite deep on how far you can actually go. So yeah, my advice is just try it, have a project in mind, and see what you can do with it.
Yeah, I found it. I did learn it at actually .NET. VB Sharp in uni, and then I had a project to do C#. And the way I I needed to relearn the fundamentals, and there was some podcasts. I'll find the links, but there was 4 or 5 podcasts. There might have been from Microsoft that I just listened to each day on the way to work. that just went over the basics, like the objects and the types and, all the sort of thing, like all the basics. So when you're looking at it, it suddenly, like the structure makes sense. You understand like, this is how a general piece of code is structured. And then it's a lot easier to just learn, okay, well, I need to go find this, I need to import this and, these are the methods I need to use, that sort of thing. So made it a lot easier.
I think for me, it actually, learning PowerShell was, I came from a VB and VB script background. So I was kind of went from VB script to PowerShell, and then I went from PowerShell to C#. So I kind of, like, once I understood the, object structure, and then basically I kind of just dipped my toe in C#, and I was kind of thought, okay, yeah, it's typed, strongly typed, blah, 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 this specific programming methodologies that I'm not fully across, but, after a period of time, I got very, very comfortable in it. And then it got to the point where I was basically had to step back to PowerShell, and I was writing C# code, just like running, equals and completely different conditions. And then I was like, oh wait, I can't do that. And then Wayne's like, Michael, you can't do that. Your code's not right. So but at the end of the day, I found it was actually quite easy to make that jump from PowerShell to C#, mainly because PowerShell's written in C#. So the similarities are very, very evident.
I would add that if you're familiar with PowerShell already, there's a few concepts that would probably help you during the jump. So if you start really looking into classes, and it's very limited, there's not that much implemented, I would say, in PowerShell yet. So it's pretty simplistic, but it would still give you a good understanding of, what an object, a class, and then how you can create those constructors. Like those concepts would probably help you a fair bit if you transition to C#. So that's a good start if you're already familiar with PowerShell. But otherwise, as Jordan said, just go on, try it out. It's going to be hard. Get some help. It's going to be hard to get started. What VS Code extension should I install? These kind of things is probably the hardest. And then you have IntelliSense. When IntelliSense is already helping you out, or maybe Code Autopilot, those things probably going to help you get started pretty easy.
One more thing that just came up in my mind is look at other projects out there. So if you know of like something that's sort of simple or around what you're looking at, see how they've written it and how it all works, step through the code if you can, and go from there. Like seeing how other people do it is pretty great for me.
Alrighty. So I've got two more questions. I'm going to close questions now. Yes, Wayne's just thrown the last question in, which is a non-technical question, but I'm going to quickly step back one. And all right, so when you write PowerShell scripts, do you start with a template or from scratch each time? When I write scripts where I work, they force me to use proper commandlet names, but I find using that's two. Sorry. When you write PowerShell scripts, do you start with a template or from scratch each time?
I just copy my latest project from a similar language and do a find replace of like the various terms and go from there. I know there's things like Plaster that's out there to try and make templates a lot easier. I haven't particularly used it before. So like I know someone did a presentation on it, but I just find it's a lot easier just to copy and paste existing projects and go from there.
Yeah, I've got boilerplate code. Where I previously worked, I used PSF framework, and then essentially had a project. Essentially what I did is I had a project in Azure DevOps where all our templated functions and code lived in, and it would actually go and dynamically download them, and you could actually dynamically interpolate them into your script. So it asks you questions like, hey, do you want to add, do you want to set, SSH? Do you want to add logging? Do you want to add this, and this? And then it basically just added a boilerplate code. Nowadays, I just use boilerplate code. I've just got literally a piece of code that I kind of just go Control-A, Control-C, and then start off that.
I'd say it depends where you are in your. So first of all, what do you want to write? So you mentioned script in the question. Personally, I don't write scripts anymore. I usually write modules. That's the first thing. But then if you think about module, then there's a little bit more, going on. How do you start writing your thing? Do you follow some practices like separating functions in different files? Do you want to have different files, between the public and the private ones, which is something that I do. So there's a different concepts. And if you want to follow, if people create those type of roles, which are not mandatory, but if people follow them, it's because there's some reasons behind it. As an example, so I'm the author of one of those plaster-based templating things. So it's called Sampler, and then it uses plaster templates to be able to generate a project. It's not that much boilerplates for the module itself, because you write your functions, but it's boilerplate for all the building processes, how to build, to run the tests, have analyzer rules to make sure you're following some practices that, some rules in your code, not having aliases as an example, there's so many others. And then make sure it's easy for you to build it in Azure DevOps is also one of the things we're doing. And the main reason we came to do that is we have lots of modules. So just the DSC community, we have over 50 modules, all the DSC resource modules, all the modules that we use as testing, tooling, on this kind of thing. So there's more than 50 modules. So we have, I don't know how many maintainers, maybe more than 50 maintainers. And we need to be able to have a consistent writing experience and building experience, so that everyone, if you just clone a project, you know exactly where you are, you know what to do, and you know how to use it. So then you can very quickly contribute, create your pull request, and then everything's going to happen automatically. So that's why you can use boilerplates for those things. When you are more experienced, and then you also have written lots of modules, you don't need to have a boilerplate for creating a function, because usually, you just can do it. Muscle memory is, you're going to always have maybe your commanded bindings, then your parameters, then your thing. And then you have the tooling, maybe like Script Analyzer, to help you do the right thing if you're missing one of those.
I think to add as well is that VS Code kind of also can pre-fill a lot of that out for you as well. So if you write, the moment in IntelliSense you write param, you literally get your full param block in. So it makes it a lot easier to kind of do the right thing. So you're not having to start from scratch. All right, I've got one more question. It's going to be a non-technical question. I don't think Gail, actually, I know we'll probably get Gail to answer this one. No, I don't think you can answer this one. Is the Brisbane meetup only for locals? I remember looking to sign up for a web event, but I didn't get approved in time. I think I'll answer this one.
It's daylight here.
No, the Brisbane meetup is for anyone. Like anyone can join at whatever time zone. I think when we eventually meet up physically, what we're probably going to do is continue to stream. I know that we'll probably continue to stream so that people can just continue to jump in and ask questions that way, or we will do it. We'll have a physical meetup with teams, and people can dial in if they choose to. But obviously, just with the likes of the Rona, there's a distinct lack of physical meetups at the moment. So every time we do have a meetup, I know that we go into lockdown. So I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but if we organise a meetup, we're probably going to be going to lockdown. That I think is it. Thank you to our esteemed guests. Thank you for your time, everybody. Huge thank you to Gail, especially because I know it's you actually probably at work right now. So
it's easier for me. It's in the morning and I work from home. So
yeah,
perfect.
Yeah, that makes it so much easier. So I know that everyone, thank you for everyone for joining us. And I'll just leave it there. Is anything else I need to add? Or anyone else want to add anything?
No, I was super impressed with. Oh, sorry, Gail. I was super impressed with the responses. Like this is gold for anyone who wants to learn about any of the things that we discussed tonight. That was a great session. Thanks.
Yeah, I think there's the one thing I do want to mention. This is just to kind of embarrass Wayne a little bit. Is Wayne Gail, Wayne thinks that you're an amazing person, like you're like the the god of DSC.
He is. Yeah, I'm not even gonna argue this. So I learned DSC, like I think maybe it came out in PowerShell version 2 initially or something, or 3. I forget exactly when it came out, but around 2-3 time frame.
WMF4.
Oh yeah, and I've been following DSC since then. And I thought, when is DSC going to take off? Like, and then I came across what you were doing in DSC. I'm like, okay, this is DSC. this is where it needs to be.
Which is based on Puppet, but let's not go deep down in there. Yes.
Yeah. It's kind of, I still get a good laugh about when we actually did our first stream, and Glenn basically, and you were giving a talk on DSC, and then Glenn invited you, Gail, and then Mitch is like, hey Wayne, Gail's in the chat, and you're just like,
Yeah, because I'm like, it's just like, when you're doing a technical talk or something about something, and you're like, I know this, and then it's on DSC, and then Gail joins, and you're like, oh crap. Do I actually know this?
But the thing to remember is, it's not about DSC. DSC is just the tool, at the very end of your pipeline. The idea is, okay, how do you manage your environment? And then this is the configuration management concepts. And at the very tiny end, which actually doesn't take that much space, that's the DSC part. If you learn something like this, you can reuse any other tools because all the concepts will translate. And the concepts are much more difficult because it's a mindset shift. So it's much more difficult to get the concepts that the DSC tool actually, it's a tiny pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, everything that I learned in the early days of DSC has translated well to things like ARM templates and Bicep and all that sort of stuff down the track, and Terraform, God forbid, those sorts of things.
Azure policy, CloudFormation, all of those things, principles are still apply even if the technology changes completely.
Alrighty. Anyway, thank you everyone. Have a good night, and I'll be putting up the I'll put up the YouTube link probably tomorrow because I'm going to go to bed, even though it's 7:30. I'll put up the YouTube link tomorrow, and yes, next month's meetup will be PowerShell Security with me. So anyway, thank you everybody, and have a good night.
Awesome. Thanks.
See you all.
Thank you. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Yeah.